just had surgery. Just had surgery on your shoulder, and you are here, and you showed up for each and every person here. Can you guys give me so much love for being here live with me today? Much for being here. There's 260,000 people screaming for you right now.
Great to see you all. Welcome to my other home. How you guys liking our digs here?
This has been such a blessed day so far.
I'm so glad.
Thank you so much. This is Tony's studio. We're doing this live from everybody. So huge thank you for the honor of hosting this event here. It has been phenomenal. We have had some of the most incredible people on the planet here, all live today, including every one of the 260,000 people live right now, and you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So
apologize for my position, but I had emergency surgery. I had some bone chips. I had a bone spur, and it went into my bicipital tendon, so the nerves were going crazy. So they told me to cancel today. If I'm a little loopy, I'm in a lot of pain, so I wouldn't be too loopy, so hopefully I'll make some sense to all of you today. But I wasn't going to cancel on you, especially not on you on this special day.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Everyone so appreciates it. Yeah, it means a lot. Thank you. Congratulations on your book hitting #1 New York Times again. Every book #1 New York Times bestseller.
Thank you.
Thank you for reading Worthy. Thank you for endorsing, giving your feedback on Worthy and the kind words you've shared, and just for being here today. So, every single person's here really to build their self-worth and learn to believe that they are enough. And, for our topic that we're tackling, just this idea of so many of us carry around disempowering labels, either that someone else said about us or we say about ourselves. We let them take root. We think they're the truth. And you are the best in the world at talking about limiting beliefs and how to overcome them. And so, Tony, there's a lot of people here right now that this is their first ever event. So we've had people crying in the Zooms and typing how they've never done an event like this before. And I love the foundation of this, right? The foundation of everything that you do in terms of how do you overcome a limiting belief. And so can you just share with everyone, I'm going to ask you the most basic question because I'm so let's get the foundation right. Can you explain what a limiting belief is and what it does to us?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think we all know what they are inherently, but think of a limiting belief. First of all, what's a belief? A belief is nothing but a feeling of absolute certainty about what something means. So if you say, I believe I'm intelligent, then you're certain you're intelligent. I believe I'm sexy, so you're certain. I believe I'm not sexy, then you're certain you're not sexy. So it's a feeling of absolute certainty. And that feeling of certainty is what affects all human performance. So I don't know how many of you, even whether you follow sports or not, but if you watch a basketball game and you see a player going up to shoot a free throw, or a football game and a kicker's going up to kick, and there's a part of you that goes, I know they're going to miss it. And then they do. How do you know? Well, you know because you can see the uncertainty in their body. When you produce certainty, your chance of performing or producing a result goes up 100-fold. So what's a limiting belief? It's simply a feeling of certainty about a limitation. So you might say, I've tried everything. That would be a limiting belief, because once you believe you've tried everything, even you're certain, you're not going to try anything else because it's a waste of your time. Or in a relationship, all the good ones are gone. As soon as you believe that, as soon as you feel absolutely certain, you're not going to be open to it. Even if the person was right in front of you, you're not going to notice it. I used to be 38 pounds heavier than I am now, and my belief was I was big boned. Well, so I have the same bones as I had then, right? But I had to get through that limiting belief. That was my story. So think of your limiting belief as a story that you've told yourself over and over again so often that you begin to believe it. In fact, there's an old phrase that says, if you tell a lie big enough, long enough, and to enough people, sooner or later, people believe it. And who said that was Hitler? But we're usually Hitler to ourselves. We tell ourselves these limiting stories over and over and over again. And so think of this way. You might jot down in your notes, beliefs create and beliefs destroy. That's how powerful they are. They are the creator of your life or the destruction of your life. It create or destroy your relationships. If you have an experience that's painful, what does the human brain do? A painful experience, we don't want to experience it again, so we look for the source, but we make quick decisions about the source. So let's say you're in a great relationship, it was the most passionate relationship of your life, the happiest you've ever been, and then boom, it ends, and it ends so painfully because it's been so beautiful, right? Well, your brain has lots of options, but the first thing is I never want to feel this pain again, and so it'll often come up with a belief to protect you. The belief might be relationships are nothing but pain, or men are pain, or women are pain, or whatever the metaphor may be. And so the problem is the wall that protects you also imprisons you, because then you can never break out of it until you get enough pain to push you out of it again. And so there's different levels of belief. There's opinions, there's beliefs, and there's convictions. Opinions are things where you've heard some things about it, you think you know what you believe, but you could be influenced if someone showed you new evidence. A belief is something like, think of it as like a tabletop. An idea is a tabletop with no legs, it'll just drop through. But if I got some legs underneath this tabletop, try manipulating my hand here, and I got 4 or 5 legs of references that say, well, if I ask somebody, for example, in a seminar, I'll ask a lady, who here feels they're sexy? If I ask the room right now, those of you I could see, how many of you believe you are sexy? Make some noise, raise your hand if you're sexy. Great.
Most.
How many believe you're not sexy? How many believe you're not sexy? Raise your hand, make a little noise, not sexy. They're not making as much noise, but you see them. Now, the people that believe they're sexy, not everybody thinks they are. The people believe they're not sexy, I guarantee you there's somebody who thinks that they are. Even if they think, oh, I'm not the right size or shape. If you've been to the internet, you know every size and shape is desired by somebody. It doesn't matter, right? It's total BS, right? So I'll take somebody like that and I'll figure out why do they believe that they're unattractive, or why do they believe they're attractive? And I'll find what the legs are. So for someone might say, well, I know I'm a sexy because men have told me so. And I'll say, well, have men ever lied to you before? And they go, what? So the way in which you get rid of a belief is you start to question it. You can't keep a belief if you produce doubt. But the problem is most of us question our beliefs. We doubt our beliefs and, believe our doubts. And so what we have to do is figure out what they are. So convictions are something that someone would rather die than give up. Like, this is what I believe no matter what. Those are harder. Those are people who've got tree trunks. But if you sweep the legs, imagine if I can take out the legs, if I can make the legs shaky, all of a sudden you're open to something new. Another metaphor would be, I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember listening to music on CDs, but we also on CDs, if you remember that, you have the CD and you pop it in and you'd hear this music because there's a pattern on the CD. Well, if you have a CD in your brain, a belief you already have, and I try to put a new belief inside, it's not going to work. I got to pop out the old one, take out a needle, and go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth across it. And if you ever scratch one of those CDs, if you're old enough to remember that, you try to play it, it won't play. So now you're willing to reject it, and you're open to something new. So we have to uncover what are the limiting beliefs. And sometimes you're not even aware of them. They're more unconscious in nature. I'm curious, how many of you out there have some beliefs that intellectually you know better, but emotionally they still limit you? Make some noise if you can relate to that out there, right? So it isn't just intellectual, it's somewhat conditioned in our nervous system.
This is going to be a big question, but again, you're the best in the world at teaching this. How do we overcome a limiting belief?
Well, the first key is to become aware that it's a limiting belief, obviously, to catch it. And as you know, I do a whole seminar where I do a whole day. One of the days is on this. It's that powerful. It's that important. But I can give it to you this way, because sometimes you don't even know 100% what the belief is. It's more like a feeling. You can't articulate it completely. But I'll give you an example. How many of you out there, our brains link pain and pleasure to things, okay? Whatever we associate enough pleasure to, you're going to move towards. Whatever we associate enough pain to, you're going to move away from. What's hard is when you link pain and pleasure to the same thing. So if I say marriage, for some people, yay. Other people, they're real quiet. Other people, negative emotion, right? Well, if you link lots of negative, you're going to avoid it. If you link lots of pleasure, you're going to move towards it. Well, think if you want to change something and you're addicted to it, and that's what it is. A belief is an addiction. You've told yourself this over and over again. It's a mental habit, right? The only way you're going to stop it is link enough pain to it. So how many of you out there have ever had a food or an alcohol that you used to love, absolutely love, and then one day you had an experience where you will never even think of drinking that alcohol or having that food again? Who's had an experience like this? Make some noise if you know what I'm talking about, right? So that doesn't take any willpower, does it? I always tell people willpower, I got a lot of willpower, I bet all of you do too. But there's a limit to willpower. What you have to do is change your conditioning. And that's what I do like in a day-long process. But here's the essence of it. How did you change in one day from loving that alcohol to hating it, or loving that food to hating it? Well, you had an experience that was so painful that what went inside you probably came out a variety of areas of your body simultaneously. It was extremely unpleasant, and your brain linked, oh my God, how many of you, even the smell of that alcohol or the smell of that food, you can't even stand anymore to this day? Make some noise if you can relate to that, right? So no one has to work now on not thinking about that food or not wanting that food. You're not having to use willpower for that food. So most of what I do is conditioning. So what I get people to do, for example, and I know you've been through it many times, the Dickens pattern. And one of my seminars called Unleash the Power Within, we do about a half a day, and we find the 3 most limiting beliefs of your life. And people have to dig. What is it? And when I tell them, when they come up with the 3, what's below that? And one of the deepest ones is the one you're addressing here very often for people is like, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I'll never be enough. And so then what we do is we go through and we find what are the negative consequences in the past. Think of like if you saw the original movie or read the original story, of the Dickens process. I call it based on the Dickens story, right? Where here's this guy that doesn't want to change. He believes things. He believes he needs to be mean in order to be successful because his dear friend died on him and screwed him out of a bunch of money in his mind. And so now he's going to be tight and mean. But his whole life changes in one night. How? 3 neuroassociative conditioning specialists show up at his house. 3 ghosts show up at his house. And what do? They came from the past and get him to feel all the pain of what these beliefs have cost him, this way of living. Then they take him through the pain of the present. Then they take him to the future where literally he can't take it anymore. And then all of a sudden he wakes up and he's got a chance to change it all and he's willing to do it. That's called leverage. The only way you change is if you find strong enough reasons to. People will hang on to their pain and their limiting beliefs until they find something they value more. I've worked with moms, for example, that unfortunately have lost their children, let's say, to a drunk driver. And they live in pain until one day they make a shift and decide, no, if I stay in this pain, my other children feel like they're not enough. They deserve all of my love. They deserve to feel this. And I need to honor my child. And so one of those women I worked with is the woman who started Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAD. And so all of a sudden now she doesn't have pain when she thinks about her daughter. She has a purpose, right? And so she gave up, but she had to find something she valued more. She valued her other children's happiness more than her own. She would have stayed unhappy for herself, but that she valued more. You got to find something you value more than your pain, more than your problem. You have to have strong enough reasons. I always tell people, reasons come first, answers come second. If you got strong enough reasons to change, you can change anything. If you said you can't stop smoking cigarettes, and I come along with a gun and you believe I'm in the mafia, and I say, I'm gonna kill you, but first I'm gonna kill your children in front of you. If you smoke 1 cigarette, you think you could stop? Yeah, 0 question. So write down this in your notes if you would. Change is never a matter of ability. Change is never a matter of ability. It's always a matter of motivation or reasons. If you got strong enough reasons, you can change anything. But what most people do is their problem is their drug. The biggest drug in the world is not cocaine, it's not alcohol, it's not, pot, it's problems. Because we all have a fear that we're not enough. Everybody has that fear. It's inborn. And in some area, we're not enough. You may not be feeling it this moment. And if we're not enough, we're afraid we won't be loved. And so that's a huge fear. So we come up with a reason why it's okay. It's just because I have ADHD. It's just because I went through this bad relationship. It's just because I was abused. All those things may be true, but that's not why you're not in a relationship. You're not in a relationship because you're scared. And you would have come up with another reason otherwise. Limiting beliefs are a story you create to deal with your fear. And if you want a great life, you have to take on something called courage. Every one of us has it. Faith and courage. Faith, every person has it, regardless of your upbringing, regardless of your religion. Think about it. If you drive a car down a street with nothing but a yellow line dividing you from crazy people on the other side, who are driving 65 miles an hour towards you, and you know, every single day in every city in the world, somebody crosses that line. They fall asleep, they're drunk, they're texting, and they kill someone. Happens every day. So how do you get up and leave your house? Faith. Faith is, I have no reason to believe this, but I've decided to, because the alternative is stay home and have no life. You have to decide that this BS, this belief system, right? BS, that's what it is. It's got to go. Not another day, not another hour. You draw the line in the sand. And that's what you did when you went to that seminar so many years ago.
I sure did.
Yep.
I sure did. Now we're here.
Now we're here.
Okay. I want to ask you this: why? And you're saying it's virtually everyone. Why do so many men, women, all of us struggle with feeling unworthy?
Well, I was burnt with that question early on because I used to say, what are you afraid of? Who here has a fear? I'll ask your audience. Who here has a fear of rejection? Raise your hand, make a little noise. Fear of rejection. Who's got a fear of failure? Fear of failure. Who's got a fear of success? Who's got a fear of success and failure? Okay, you guys are screwed. We're not going any further. But what happens is, as I dug in all these fears, I found as I went deeper and deeper, like what's behind that fear, I got to, there's two primary fears for all humans. All humans. I've dealt with the most successful human beings in the world, presidents of countries, top entertainers, business people, and the most challenged, kids in prison, you name it. We all have two fears. The fear number one is that we're not enough. And the deeper fear is if we're not enough, we won't be loved. Because love is the oxygen of the soul. And why is that? I was like, why are human beings wired this way? Because I work with people in 193 countries, every country in the world. I've worked with the most successful and found that, or unsuccessful and found the same things. And what I began to realize is if you look around and you study all animals, not just humans, you'll see that we are unique in one way. Our dependency on another for our survival is the longest period of time of any animals in the animal kingdom except primates. They're the same as us. So what does that mean? Well, some animals are born and they're in an egg and they never see their mother or father. They're born, they wake up, and the egg hatches and they're on their own from day one. But God, the universe, whatever you prefer, I prefer God, but whatever you prefer, God of the universe provided them with some form of evolutionary advantage. They either have some coloration that allows them to hide, or they have special claws to protect themselves. They have some advantage that they can, if they fight for it, they'll be able to hopefully survive. Well, if you think about that, there are other creatures that are born and they will not survive unless their parents are there for a period of time. A bird is born, guess what? The nest is already made for you. You didn't do it, thank God. Someone goes out and gets you your food, but how long last? 2 weeks, and then get your ass out and fly, right? But we as humans, how long are we dependent? Well, if a baby is born in the forest by themselves, a human baby, it's going to die. Our advantage is love. Our advantage is our capacity to care for one another. And we have it because we need it to survive for a longer period of time. So if you take a baby and say 2 weeks from now, kick them out, do it on your own, they're going to die. But we have something else, and what is it? Love, and it shows up in every mother on earth, because every mother loves their child, even though they look like a lizard when they're born, right? Father says, it's a lizard. The mother says, how dare you? It's the most beautiful child in the world. Mothers think their children are beautiful when they're fat and they're toothless and they're drooling, right? Is it true? Of course. Why? Because you're on drugs, that's why. But they're natural drugs. It's called oxytocin. Oxytocin is a natural drug, and when you get pregnant, you get a mass dose of oxytocin, which is the love drug. It makes you love that child no matter what. In fact, mothers can't leave their babies if they're biochemically healthy. If you are someone who were adopted or given away, it wasn't your mother didn't love you, she was biochemically unhealthy. She couldn't leave otherwise, there's no choice. Fathers get oxytocin too, but about 1/4 the amount. So they can go off and do other things. The mother's bonded right here to the child at all times. So this love, by the way, what did you have to do to get this love? Now I'm answering your question now. Why do we all feel so unworthy? Well, what did you have to do to be worthy of love as a baby? Nothing. You shit your pants, you were loved. You threw up all over your mother and father, green poop, you were still loved, right? You knocked the food away, you were loved. Until one day when the oxytocin wore off. And all of a sudden you did the same thing. You knocked the food away or you did something, and instead of just being loved on, you got yelled at or you got smacked. Or what would be worse than smacked? You got ignored. And that's the moment fear entered your body. And that's the moment that we all have to figure out, how can I be enough, significant enough to get this love? Because without the love, see, what is love? Love is when you put someone else's needs completely ahead of your own. And that's the beauty of humans. We do this for our children. We put them ahead of everything in our own. But guess what? When the oxytocin wears off, now it's like, I got to earn it. And so that fear, that desire to be loved unconditionally no matter what, to be worthy by doing nothing, we all have it because we had it at one time and it was taken from us. So then I asked myself an interesting question. I don't know the answer to this. I'm telling you my hallucination. I think the reason it's taken from us is we'd be selfish bastards if we felt worthy every moment. There are some people that really think their shit doesn't stink, no pun intended. And how many of you want to be around that person, right? It's like, I think it was taken from us because we're meant to then grow. We're meant to do something more. Life is about, what are we here to give? It's not what we're here to get. It's not that I'm so worthy. It's become worthy by doing something worthy. That's my view of things. And so I think why we have it is the way we're conditioned. What we can do about it is we can decide to become worthy. That, I think, is the real secret.
How do we do that?
Well, it comes by stopping the delusion that says I should just feel worthy. I mean, you've already seen it yourself. How did you become worthy, really? I've seen your path. You worked your tail off. People told you what you couldn't do, but you had something you wanted to serve more than yourself. It wasn't really about you being worthy, honey. I watched you. It was really about you serving other women. It was about you helping. It was about you making a difference. I've seen you since the beginning. If it was all about your worthiness, then it's all about you. Screw I'm worthy. I'm not talking about the book or the quality of what I'm saying. I'm saying take it from a different place. Say, what am I here to serve more than myself? See, I never felt like I was worthy, but I wasn't focused on that. It's like, there's an old phrase that says, art for art's sake is the philosophy of the well-fed. For you to have enough time to be worried about your worthiness shows how wealthy you've grown up in a culture where you have time to think about this. You're not having to figure out how to survive. But I personally came from the place of survival, and it's like I had to take care of my brother and my sister. They're 5 and 7 years younger. I had to, protect them from my mom, who was a beautiful soul, but when she drank alcohol and did, prescription drugs, she became very violent. And so I had to become really a practical psychologist. And then I've had to figure out how to support my family. And so my whole thing was, I need to focus on what am I going to do to make things better. And nobody's worthy. I'll give you an example. And again, I'm using sports examples, and I know we have more ladies in the room, but I know a lot of, how many of you are familiar with the NBA? Follow somebody like the Warriors, anybody? So I'm fortunate to own pieces of a variety of sports teams, and the Warriors is one of them, and I've worked with Steph and the team for some time. And if you know Steph Curry, the greatest three-point shooter in history. And if you watch him, he makes it look so easy. He chews on it like Bugs Bunny on his mouthpiece. He shoots the ball, and a lot of times he shoots and he doesn't even wait. He turns and walks, starts running down the court. He already knows. He doesn't wait to see it be made. So you go, wow, he's a genius. Oh my God, he's amazing. He doesn't think about being worthy. Let me tell you how he's worthy. He practices 500 shots a day, 7 days a week, his entire life since he was a young kid in his teenage years. Now let's just take the 15 years he's been a professional. 500 shots a day, 3,500 shots a week, 14,000 shots to give you an idea a month, 168,000 shots a year, 15 years, he's practiced 2,520,000 shots. That's the minimum he's done in practice to make 3,500 shots in games and be the best in history. So he's worthy. Here's what I'll tell you to be worthy. Write this down if you would and practice it. If you practice in private, you'll be rewarded in public. Whatever you practice in private, you'll be rewarded in public. All the stuff you did behind the scenes that got you there are what really got you there. It wasn't just I'm worthy. In my opinion, you got that after the fact. And so I would argue to people that why not argue I'm not worthy because I haven't done shit yet. but I'm going to be worthy. I'm going to do really good things for people. I'm going to find a way to help my children or help my community or make a difference in this project or do this thing at my company or do something for humanity. I'm not talking about, saying these things verbally to position yourself. I'm talking about what really drives you. And if you're really focused on serving something more than yourself, you'll get the energy to go forward and you'll do great things. And when you do great things, you'll go, oh, amazing, I'm worthy.
Yeah, there's a whole chapter in the book Worthy called Overexposed, Underdeveloped. And it's a big thing right now in 2024 because you have a lot of people online with no barriers to entry, and they've never actually done the thing that they're talking about. They're just really, really good at talking about it. And it talks about how important action is behind everything. I'm going to ask you this question because you talk about Steph Curry. You also talk about success leaves clues. In your journey, speaking to millions and millions of people, impacting over 50 million people in over 195 countries. And you talk about his journey of all the shots and the free throws and this and the that. Can you just share just a little bit inside the life of Tony Robbins? Because when you're explaining the discipline of Steph Curry, I'm thinking about the discipline of your life and the reps that you put in and how laser focused you are on everything that you're doing. Can you share with everyone a little bit of insight into that? Because you always say success leaves clues, and I think it's fascinating.
So you're talking about like my daily practices, or you're talking about how I started, or?
All of it. All of it. All of it. I think you're the one, I would say, of anybody I know, you are so focused and clear about and intentional about how you spend every second.
Well, I don't know if it's every second. That might be an exaggeration. But when people ask my wife, what's something about Tony that no one knows? She goes, how hard he prepares.
Yeah.
So I over-prepare for everything.
Yeah.
And the reason is, it's like, again, that's how, I don't think of it as worthy. That's how I'm fully prepared. That's how I'm certain. I don't take it for granted. At this stage of my life, I could get up with my pinky and just do whatever I need to do. But my practice is to over-deliver, because when I get out there, I want to make sure that the time I have with people actually has a chance to help them change their life. So, but my practices start with physical. I mean, if you knew, this was a little more today because of this, but if you knew what I go through, I do everything from my workouts with depriving myself of oxygen to hyperbaric oxygen to the freezing cold every morning to, the list of what I do physically to be able to get on stage and do 12, 13 hours a day and keep people's attention in a stadium of 20,000 people for 3, 4, 5 days, 7 days in a row is pretty intense. So there's the physical preparation. Then there's the mental preparation. Then there's just the constantly growing part, so that it's like I really believe that if you really want to be happy, there's only one key to happiness: progress. Progress equals happiness. If you are not where you want to be physically, mentally, emotionally, in your relationship, and you just do what's hard, you figure out what you want and you do what's hard, you make a little bit of progress, you're not there yet, but you keep making progress every day, you're going to be happy. And think about this. How many of you have ever achieved a goal and then you worked so hard at it, and then you got there, and then your brain went, is this all there is? Who's had this experience? Make some noise if you have, right? Or maybe, and that's the worst, because it's like you worked hard, you got it, and you're unhappy still. That's because it really wasn't what you wanted. It's what you thought you were supposed to go for. But you could also even think of something where you worked your guts out, you achieved something, and you were so happy. Well, how long did you stay happy? You achieved the goal. Were you happy for a year, 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 days, 6 hours? Most people, their happiness lasts somewhere between 6 hours and about 6 weeks max. And the reason is we're not supposed to sit at the table of success too long or we get fat and bored. It's like we're designed as human beings, everything on earth grows or it dies. Everything in the universe grows or dies. And everything in the universe, this isn't my rule, it's the rule of the universe, contributes in some way or evolution eliminates it. So if you want to be happy, you need to make progress. You need to grow and you need to give. And if you're constantly growing and giving, you're not going to have to worry about feeling worthy, because you'll be so focused on growing and giving that the worthiness is no longer even a question. This is a question only because you haven't done anything. And here's the problem today. We, as a culture, have taught people that everyone's equal, and we're not. We're equal as souls, but we're not equal in our understanding. We're not equal in our skills. We're not equal in our abilities. So we can become equal, but we don't start out that way. It requires discipline and focus. So I remember I was interviewing, I'll leave it private for the person, but a president of a country, and there were a lot of people in the room, and this is during Brexit. And I might as well tell you, it's Tony Blair. And because it won't make sense otherwise. And someone asked the question about Brexit, about what was happening, between Europe and Britain. And so he gave his opinion. And this person stood up and says, well, I disagree with you completely, and I don't think you have an idea of what you're talking about. And they went on and on and on. This person had never done anything in their entire life in government or business. And he said, well, I was prime minister for 8 years, right? Today, because of social media, we think because you have access to a megaphone that everyone's equal. And some people just yell a lot and get a lot of attention, but that doesn't mean they're skilled. And so I would argue that we don't need to all be worthy of everything. We become worthy by going what I would call the hero's journey. I can give you the short version of the hero's journey. Every great story of humanity is the story of the hero. And the hero can be a man or a woman, doesn't matter who. It's anyone who has a life that's kind of going along a certain way, and then something happens that jolts you, that calls you to go on the adventure to discover who you really are. You took that call. You've continued to take that call. It's one of the reasons I love and respect you so much. And you call other people. You show them how to do that by your example. So what does that look like? Well, it might be a divorce. It might be an empty nest. Your children have grown up, and now you're trying to figure out what to do. It might be, my gosh, I've done this for years, and I'm the best in the world out of it, but I'm bored at it now. It's not fulfilling. It might be a health issue. Something happens that distorts or pushes you out of your comfort zone. And so if you're using a simplistic example, you could say, you have somebody in Star Wars, and you have a young man who dreams of going on an adventure, and then his parents are killed, and so he's got to figure out what to do. And all of a sudden, this princess shows up and calls him to come on an adventure. Was he worthy? He didn't think he was worthy. He didn't know if he was worthy. He didn't care. He just knew he had to go on the adventure. And when you go on the adventure, here's what's going to happen. You're going to find lots of things you're unworthy at. You're going to find lots of other things you're not skilled at, you're not good at. And if you only do things because you're confident and you feel good, you won't do most of the things that are necessary. You do them because you need to. You do them because they're part of your spiritual development. They're part of your growth. And so when you go on the journey, you'll face challenges, but you'll also meet mentors along the way. You'll meet people that can be the Obi-Wan for you, the people that can give you some insights. Yoda telling you, here's how you should look at things. I can't do this. I don't believe it. Well, that's why you fail, right? And you learn along the way. And then the next step is you got to tell yourself the truth. Most people don't. You have to face and tell yourself the truth about the gap between where you are and where you want to be. So you can't just say, I'm a little overweight. No, I'm 16 pounds of fat, and I want to eliminate that. Unless you can be honest and sincere, the truth will set you free, but a lack of clarity will not. And then you got to say, okay, what's kept me from progressing in the past? And I'd ask all of you right now, think of something you really want. If you want to go on this journey and you don't want life to have to punch you to do it, you can do it proactive. You can say, what do I really want in my life today? Not 10 years ago, not 5 years ago, today. And when your brain goes, I don't know what I want, go, BS, I know what I want. Get yourself stronger. What do I want? What's at least something I want in my life, in my relationship, in my career, anywhere? What do I really want, and why do I want it? Because the first step is to awaken your hunger. And when that hunger, which you had, gets strong enough, you'll take action. But then the second step is you got to face the truth. Okay, where am I compared to where I want to be? It's a long way. Okay, that's not a problem. What's gotten in the way in the past? And I'll give you 5 things right down that got in the way. See which ones they are. Is it fear? For most people, they never start because of it. Now, everybody has fear. Everybody's afraid they're not enough. Presidents of countries, great athletes, musicians, everyone has that fear. The difference is some people, in spite of the fear, they do it anyway. That's called courage. And that's just a habit. You push yourself to do it. So guess what? Is it fear? Is it a limiting belief? A belief that says, I've tried everything, the good ones are gone, this always happens to me, as opposed to something like life is always happening for me, not to me. Or everything happens for a reason. My job is to find the higher purpose in this. I'm going to find it now. Different beliefs will create a different life. Is it the third thing? Is it some other emotion? Is it stress? Is it overwhelm? Is it feeling sorry for yourself? What's gotten in the way in the past? You've got to be honest. The truth will set you free. And then, or is it a habit that's gotten in the way? Like you want to lose weight, but the first thing you do is go to Starbucks every morning and have a mocha smocha something, and you go, of course you're not going to get there. That habit has got to change. You can have all these wonderful goals and tell yourself how worthy you are, but if you don't have actions that match it, you're not going to feel worthy. And then finally, the fifth one is maybe you're missing a skill. Maybe you're trying to run a business and you never ever really learned to run a business. You don't have to go to a business school to do it. You can learn how to do it through immersion with someone who's really great, or get a mentor or a coach. But maybe you don't know how to do budgets. Maybe you're not sure how to lose weight, and you need to have someone come show you how to work out in the most effective way, so you're not working your guts out and making no progress. So those are the 5 things that get in the way. So once I know what I want, I go on the journey by telling myself the truth, then I get a map. The map is really giving myself a massive action plan. And I don't try to do a perfect map. It's just, what are the initial things I can do that would really matter? And then you got to do the most important thing most people don't do. You got to do what's hard. You got to slay your dragons, right? If the dragon was, oh, I'm not enough, you got to slay that dragon and say, yeah, I've not been enough, but I'm going to be enough now because this is what I'm going to do different. And you take that action. And then the rest of the steps are pretty easy. You come up with a daily practice, you keep measuring, you celebrate your victories, and you move up. And then what happens is you become the hero of your own life, so you can come home now to the people you love and you have something to give them. You're somebody who is not just someone who's grown, you've grown and you have something to give.
So powerful.
Is that helpful?
Powerful, for sure. You know, I want to ask you one question in particular, just because reading the chat today and reading so many people's comments, there's so many people that are here live today right now that are struggling with dimming their own light because they are people pleasers. What do you say to that, and how do you overcome it?
I used to do the same thing. I grew up very poor financially, and I had 4 different fathers, and we were always broke. The reason, I've provided 1 billion meals now, 100 million meals a year for the last 8 years. Thank you very much. And now I'm working on 100 billion meals is because I know what it's like to be hungry, right? So we had no money for food, and somebody fed my family. So I fed 2 families, and then 4, and then 8, and all those types of things. But I remember in the beginning, I said, I'm going to make money so my family doesn't go through this stuff. And as I look back on it now, I can tell you honestly, I think my parents would have all broken up even if we had money. It was just money was what people blamed on things. But I remember I went out and I made some money. I was 18 years old, and I started making about $15,000 a month, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So it'd be like, I don't know, $30,000 a month right now, something like that. And I remember I came back to where I grew up, and I had my friends, and I was like, hey, I'm doing well. Let's have fun. I want to take all of us, and we're going to go to Egypt, and we're going to race between the pyramids on camels. And I laid out this whole game plan of this vision I had, and I got all this rejection. Like, easy for you. You're rich. I'm like, I'm not rich. I'm just doing okay, but I'm not asking for anything. And I somehow in my mind I thought, if you were abundant, everybody'd be happy. And now I was abundant, everybody was unhappy. So I sabotaged everything. And I didn't do it consciously. I just started not showing up for meetings. I started doing stupid things. I never did drugs and alcohol because the people around me abused them so much that I had a negative association with that. But I used food like a drug. I gained 38 pounds. I gained 30 pounds in 30 days. That's not easy to do. You have to eat tons of food and not move very much to pull that off, which I did successfully. And so I got to the point where I felt like total dirt, because if I was bright, then people wouldn't love me. So you got to keep just certain below that certain level. And then one day I came home and I was driving my 260Z Datsun, I remember, in the car, and I ran out of gas. And I didn't run out of gas because I'd forgotten to fill the tank. I ran out of gas because I had no money. And I was living in Venice, California, and Venice was not a nice place. And I pulled along the side of Pacific Coast Highway and parked and prayed they wouldn't tow my car, because that had happened once before, and I didn't have the money to pay for the tow. And every day it's in there, the price gets higher. And so I locked the car, walked home. I remember walking up the stairs in my little apartment, 2516 Pacific Avenue, apartment 3A. I've been back to see it a few times. and the sun's setting, and I get to the front door, and there's a note typed and stapled to the door, and it's a quit or claim document. I don't know if you've ever experienced one of these, hopefully not, but if you have, it basically says you're late for your rent, you have 3 days to make it up, or remove your stuff, or the sheriff will remove your stuff, and you'll be locked out. So it's my eviction notice. So I come in, and the sun's set, it's dark, so I lit a candle. And I didn't light the candle because I like candles or a spiritual. I lit the candle because there was no electricity because I had not paid my electric bill as well. And so I'm reading my eviction notice with no electricity, feeling sorry for myself. And then something inside of me snapped, just snapped. And it's just like, and if it wasn't bad enough, God made sure I got it, because about an hour later, a knock on the door happened. And I had all these locks, and I didn't want to answer the door because I always owed money to somebody. So I'm looking through, and it's this friend of mine that I hadn't seen in like 4 years. And I got this beer belly and hadn't shaved forever, and I looked horrible. And what do you want? He goes, Tony, let me in. I let him in, and the size of my apartment was 400 square feet, so it's 1/4 of this little room we're in. And I had just a bed and a little desk I did there. And he said, what the hell happened? He goes, what are you talking about? I live near the beach. I like it here. Yeah. And I did everything to get him out of my house as fast as I could because I was humiliated. And then afterwards, there's just something snapped in me. It's like who I am as a man, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, every bit. I know I'm more than I'm living, and I got angry. And so I decided to go on a run. I didn't know what I was doing then, but this is what I recommend people. When you need to make a big change, you need to change your mental, physical state radically. And so that's what I do in all these seminars. You see people go, it's because that energy changes everything. Low energy, you don't change anything. And so I decided I'm going on this run. And I'm old enough, anybody out there old enough to have ever had a Sony Walkman? Anybody had one of those Walkmans out there? A few ancient souls. So in those days, you really had to like your music. It was on a cassette tape. You only had 6 songs. And I took this music called Barracuda from this group, and I went and I ran. I said, I'm going to run till I spit up blood. I went on the beach. I ran as hard as I could. Felt like I was going to vomit. I kept pushing till I ran through the song, and I ran back. And then I took a journal while I was still in this peak state, and I wrote everything in my life I was no longer willing to live anymore, which is pretty much everything I was doing. And on the other side, everything I was committed to. And I didn't know how to change it, but I knew I had to. And then I thought, okay, so how did I get here? What's been stopping me? And then I had all these beliefs, I realized. I wrote them all down. Now, I'm too young, because I was taught that constantly. And I was young, but I was too young for everything. I don't have the education. I don't have the money. I don't have the time, because I'm working 3 jobs. I don't give a damn was the worst one. And then I went through each one and went, what's total BS about each one of these? And I snapped myself in place. This is BS. What's the truth? And I got linked to the truth. I thought youth is energy. Youth is power. I got what people want. Thank God I don't have a traditional education. I'm going to get a PhD in results. I'm going to do a real thing, right? And I was like, my third one was, I don't have the money. That was harder because I didn't have any money. I was like, well, the most successful people on earth didn't have the money to start with. They found a way to serve. They found a way to serve other people, and they got the money. I'm going to find something to serve. And then I don't have enough time. I have all the time there is. I have the same amount of time as Bill Gates. And I don't give a damn. That's total BS. My caring is my power. And as I shifted my beliefs and shifted my body, everything shifted. And then finally I said to myself, and you could try this with yourself if you think you're dimming. It's like, if I could be more generous, should I? What do you think? If you could be more loving, should you? Sure. If you could be more playful, should you? If you could be more intelligent, expand your intelligence, should you? If you could be more financially successful, should you? Yes. Well, pretty soon I started saying there's no difference in what's spiritual. Everything is spiritual. I look at business as a spiritual game. My purpose in business is do more for others than anybody else in my industry. And if I do that, then I'm serving God. I'm serving what I'm meant to be. I don't have to worry about being worthy. The work is worthy. It's serving people. That's what makes it worthy. And I'm doing something that's meaningful. And that's what makes your life not have any dimness to it. Being dim doesn't make anybody else brighter. Being small doesn't make anybody else bigger. It doesn't inspire anybody. It doesn't challenge anybody. It sure as heck doesn't make you better.
so good. I want to, I know we're out of time. I wanted to ask one more granular thing because this is a big deal and I think most people miss this. When you talk, because I think a lot of people are writing down notes and I'm watching everyone writing right now, and you can write like, okay, my old beliefs, my new beliefs, but you talk about the physicality of your body. And when I watch, Carissa come in and get everyone pumped up and a lot of us are dancing and moving, can you talk about how movement in our body, even if we're limited to a chair and we're moving our upper body, but how that's so important and how that makes such a difference in
Yes.
actually things taking root. Because I think a lot of people miss that. Or they'll go to an event and wonder, why did I leave event and everything just left?
That's
Why
right.
did I forget everything that I thought I learned? But can you talk about that key piece? Because I feel like no one ever talks about or knows about that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I've been teaching it for decades. Everybody in the world models what I do now. But when I started out, there were no seminars with dancing and moving. That would be a aerobics class or something, right?
Yeah.
But the reason I put music in and did what I did was because I inherently knew that the higher the level of the energy, the more retention people would have. When you're low level of energy, you learn things and go, that's great, that's important, I should do that. The state you're in when you're learning determines what you're going to do later. So I put my audience in a peak state, and I keep myself in that peak state because that changes everything. But it's been proven. Stanford came to me 3 years ago in the middle of COVID, and they said, look, we had 2 of our doctors, professors, come to your Date with Destiny seminar, a multi-day seminar I do. And both of them were clinically depressed, on Prozac and Zoloft and so forth. And they came back, they're off the drugs, and they have no symptoms of depression. And this is amazing. What data do you have? I said, well, I have millions of graduates, for 46 years. And they said, well, no, but like scientific data. I said, I don't have any, that's not my focus, but if you want to do a study, we'd love to do it. They said, we'd love to. I said, on what? They said, on depression. I said, great, well, what's the average, what do people get through traditional treatment? And if you're familiar with studies, they do what's called meta-studies, where they read like 100 studies, and then they summarize the best of them. They said meta-studies show that 60% of the people who get treated for depression make zero progress. Whether they're in drugs or therapy or both, doesn't matter. That's pretty horrible. 40% improve, but on average, they improve 50%. I said, that's pretty terrible. And most of these people take these drugs that have side effects like suicidal thoughts for decades. And it affects your sex life, your emotional life, your health, your energy, your weight, everything. But this is what we still do. And by the way, a year ago, it was on the cover of Newsweek. They did a meta-study on SSRIs, the drugs that are given to people, and they proved they don't work, but we still give them to people. So I said, that's a number I think we should easily beat. I said, but what's the best study you've ever done? And they said, the best study was done at Johns Hopkins 5 years ago, where they took people in for a month who were depressed and gave them psilocybin, magic mushrooms, and cognitive therapy for a month. I said, well, you should get some change out of that, right? And it's totally illegal. You can't do it anywhere else. And so they said it was the greatest result they'd ever measured in the history of psychiatry. 6 weeks after the treatment, they had 54% of the people had no symptoms, depression, zero. The most successful thing that's ever been done, but there's no follow-up because it's not legal in most states, right? I said, well, let's compare that to us. No drugs, no month, 5 days. And I'm really proud to tell you that the numbers were so great, they were afraid of being canceled. So they sent the numbers out blind to 3 other organizations before they published it in the Journal of Psychiatry, and they did last year. 100% of the people after 5 days had absolutely no symptoms of depression whatsoever, but it's even better. 17% of the people went in with suicidal ideation, constantly thinking about committing suicide or attempting suicide. They came out, 0 had it. They followed up 11 months later, nobody with depression, but here was really cool. 71% decrease in negative emotions, 52% increase in positive emotions. Now, why am I telling you this? They wanted to figure out why. Why do we get such a result? They never saw me again. 11 months later, they're still in this place. Nothing like this has ever worked. And so they followed me for 3 years, and they measured my body. Then they started measuring people in my audience, and here's what they found. When I go to speak, I get in a certain state. I'm not usually sitting like this, usually using more of myself. But I go in this certain state, and they can measure it biochemically. They had me wear this device. It's $60,000. It measures everything, heart rate variability, and so forth. During each break, they came and took my saliva. They took my blood, so I could see what's happening in my hormones. What happens is I go up, and I do the same thing. They've measured this in Tom Brady. They've measured this in peak performance teams and athletes. When the best players in the world get under pressure, they have this huge surge of testosterone. Now, testosterone, whether you're a man or woman, doesn't matter, makes you focus. It makes you drive forward, and you will remember everything when you're on testosterone at a high level. It's like if I asked you guys where you were on 9/11, how many remember exactly where you were, who was around you, what you saw, right? Well, if I ask you where you were on 8/11, most people have no clue, because information without emotion is barely retained. But when this testosterone surges, you get this drive and this memory. But usually with testosterone comes stress, cortisol. But what happened is cortisol, the stress hormone, drops in me to almost nothing. They call this the championship biochemistry. Well, I'm not telling you to say how genius I am. What's amazing is the audience mirrors me. And so they started testing live audiences and even digital audiences all around the world in different time zones while we're doing this together. And they saw them all do the exact same thing. It looks like music. We all go up into this peak state, the testosterone drops, and people make these changes in this state, and they're retained. And they're retained a year later. They're retained 2 years later. So now they're doing a 1-year study on quiet quitting, because so many people are unhappy in their work. And they showed a turnaround that in the first 5 days, 4 years of shutdowns turned around in 5 days. More, in other words, higher engagement than they ever had before. And now they're going to reveal the 12 months, but it looked like it's pretty phenomenal. So it's biochemical. So emotion is created by motion. The way you move changes the way you feel, including your face. We have 37 different muscles in our face. For most people, this is the largest area of unemployment in the country, right? They do the same looks over and over again, so they're the same feelings over and over again. But when I get you to move and do things for multiple days in a row, 10, 12 hours a day, and you thought, you couldn't sit in the seminar for 2 hours, and I'm gonna take you for 10 or 12, why? Because you're having such a good time, and because we're using your body. A minute feels like eternity when you're not enjoying yourself. 10 hours goes by and it feels like nothing when you're in the flow. But I do want to say one more thing, which is I've had plenty of experiences of not feeling worthy. I want you to understand that. The worst experiences were handled when I made a significant change. A lot of worthiness has to do with scarcity, like having enough, being enough, things of that nature. And I can remember vividly, I was working for this man, Jim Rohn, who was my personal development teacher, and I went to work for him speaking, and in the first few months, I outstripped everybody, outsold everybody. I did these speeches, and because I didn't care, I wasn't doing it for the money, I just wanted to change lives, and I wanted them to hear Jim Rohn. I knew he would change them. And then gradually, some things happened. Some people dropped out, didn't follow through. Some people bounced their checks. And so the company thought maybe I was manipulating the numbers to make money or something, and they didn't pay me for 3 months. And I was broke. I had no money, and I was still working. But in that lousy state, I was not performing very well. And I was driving on this freeway called the 57 freeway in Southern California, and I was driving through a city called Pomona around midnight, driving home from Orange County to LA where I was living, and my little Volkswagen. And I was feeling so sorry for myself and angry and sad, completely unworthy. And then I was asking myself, what happened? Like I was on such a roll. What happened? What's wrong? What am I missing? And I'll never forget, I pulled over the side of the road on the freeway. It's midnight, there's nobody there, just literally pulled over. And I used to keep these hardbound journals. And I opened this journal, on one page, I still have the journal, I wrote in one giant phrase, "The secret to living is giving." And then I started crying. And the crying it wasn't sad tears as much as it was grace tears. It was like, okay, when I started, it was all about giving. Now I'm focused on what I'm not getting. And it's a miserable life. That's not who I am. So I started to turn things around, and I did well. But, I was in business, and you learn by mistakes when you're brand new in business. And then I find myself with no money and no food, and I'm living in Venice. And I remember this one day I woke up, and I got to pay my rent, and I don't have any money. I have about $23, $24, I don't know, $25, whatever it was, and some change. I don't know what I'm going to eat. And so I decided I have got to come up with a unique plan to survive. So I'm going to go to an all-you-can-eat taco bar. I'm going to load up for the winter. And I decided to leave my car there because the place I was going to was only 3 miles. I'll walk there. I wanted to walk to a place in Marina del Rey in Southern California. There's a place called El Torito. It was right on the water. The yachts are going by, and I'm totally broke. I figured I'm going to visualize a different life, and I'm going to load myself up and survive for $5.95. And I'm leaving the car at home because I can't afford to pay for the parking too. I can't waste the money. So I went there, sat down and loaded my plate up this high and ate everything I possibly could till I was totally satiated. I was like, okay, this is going to last me for a couple of days. And I was just sitting there looking out at all these people having this great life. The door opened and the door to the restaurant was in this direction. So I saw the door open and there was a beautiful woman, breathtakingly beautiful woman I couldn't help but notice. And then like a dumb guy, I was like, whoa, well, is there a guy with her? As if I had a chance, right? And unfortunately, there was a guy with her, and he was about this tall. It was clearly her son. And he's in a three-piece suit, and he held the door for her. And he went and he pulled the chair out for her. And then when he was talking to his mom, he was like right there looking at her eyes. And I was moved. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was my own loss of relationship with my mom. I don't know what it was, but I just was so moved by this little boy. And so I got up and I paid the bill and put the last bit of money in my pocket. Probably had $19 left, something like that. And I walked up and the woman's back was to me. I didn't look at her. I went to the little boy and I went to shake his hand. I said, hi. I said, I'm Tony. And he looked up and goes, I'm Joseph. I said, Joseph? I said, I just want you to know you're a class act. I said, I watched how you held that door for your lady. I saw how you pulled out the chair for her. I see how you're totally present for her and taking her lunch like this. And he goes, well, she's my mom. And I said, that's even more impressive. He goes, well, I'm not taking her lunch because I'm only 8. I don't have a job yet. And I had no plan. I just said, yes, you are. And I reached in my pocket and I took all the money I had in the world, which $19 and some change, and dropped it on the table in front of him. And his eyes got big as garbage can covers. And he goes, I can't take that. And I said, sure you can. He said, how come? I said, because I'm bigger than you are. And he laughed and I laughed. I didn't look at the lady. That wasn't my purpose. And I floated out of the building and looked for my car and realized they didn't have one. The car wasn't there. And so then I looked like a stupid white guy, probably skipping all the way home. I was like high as the kite and I had no money. No money for food, no money to feed anything, no money for anything. But I had no fear for the first time. No worthiness issues, no anything. And I went home that night. I had no plan. I was not stressed. I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning. I was not stressed. I had no food. I had no money. And then the snail mail came. In those days, we didn't have email, right? So, and I'm not wanting to open these things. It's all bills. And I see one little note that's personal, so I open it up. And it's a letter from a friend of mine that I'd loaned $1,200 to about 2 years before when I didn't have $1,200, but he needed it so bad. And I'd been chasing him for 3 months and couldn't even get a phone call back. And he writes me this note and says, I'm humiliated, I'm embarrassed. I'm just here to say I'm so sorry. When I needed it most, you were there for me, and I didn't even pay you back. And so I finally got the money together. Here it is, and I put an extra $100 for you for interest. And in those days, $1,200 I could live for a month on. So I'm sitting there and I'm reading this note, and then I'm crying uncontrollably again. And I was like, why am I crying? This is such a beautiful thing. And then I realized it's like, this is God's grace. You know, this is it. You know, I don't know why this happened, but I chose to believe that it happened because if you think about it, it's like I did what was right. I didn't do it to get a woman's attention. I didn't do it for stars on my chart. I didn't do it for social media. I did it because my heart knew it was right, even though it should have been scary. And when I gave everything I had, lovingly, from a beautiful place in my heart, it healed that wound of scarcity. And I can tell you, I've had, you know, after that I had companies I built, and there's some that went near bankruptcy several times. None of them did. Thank God I always found my way around it. But I never, ever have returned to that place of scarcity. And I think that if you will give, so I hear people all the time say, well, you know, when I'm rich, I'll give. I have a dear friend, Mike Keys is his name. I've known him for 40-something years. I knew him when I was literally, I had no money even for a hotel room. And he was on a plane the other day, and he was telling me he loves it when he sees someone like reading one of my books. They're reading my book, Life Force, the health book. And he said, hey, what do you think of that book? And the guy marked it all up and stuff. And he goes, oh, it's unbelievable. And stem cells and this and that. And he goes, what do you think of the author? And he goes, Tony Robbins. Well, he seems like a really great guy. In fact, he donated 100% of this money to Feeding America. He's feeding like 1 billion people and stuff. And then he said, of course, he's rich, so I guess that's easy. And Mike was so awesome. Mike looked at him. He said, what if I told you I'd known that man since he was 17 years old? What if I told you I know him when he had $20 to his name and he gave 5 of it to a guy on the street we didn't know he was going to eat? I've seen him do that over and over again. I can tell you what Tony says. If you don't give a dime out of $1, you're not going to give 1 million out of 10 million or 10 million out of 100 million or 100 million out of 1 billion. So I really invite all of you. You want to be worthy? Do something for someone else who's worse off than you are, because there's always somebody worse off. It doesn't have to be money. It could be your time. It could be your attention. It could be your love. It could be anything. But the antidote to your unworthiness is action. It's not more conversation. It's not more reassuring yourself, because I'm here to tell you, your self-esteem is not tied to what people said to you. You say, but people told me my whole life I was worthless. They told you lots of things. It's really convenient you remembered that, right? Here's what's true. People can tell you you're beautiful, you're magical your whole life, and you can think you're not worth it. People can tell you you're a piece of garbage your whole life, and you can say, I'm going to show you. What people told you has nothing to do with your worthiness. It has only one thing. Self-esteem, your own worthiness to yourself, is earned by getting yourself to do difficult things. And this woman beside me, I love this woman. You have a great mentor in her because she's lived this. She doesn't talk about it. She's lived it. She started at Denny's working her tail off. She found the way. She invested in herself. She made the moves to constantly educate herself. When people told her the most stupid things, like punch people in the face for the things they said to you, she kept on going. But she did it not to be worthy. She did it to serve all of you. And that's what I love about you.
Ladies and gentlemen,